Auditing Theory, Chapter 5, Additional Information. Valuation and disclosure of long-term investments. When long-term investments are material to the financial statements, the auditor should obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding their valuation and disclosures. Audit procedures ordinarily include considering evidence as to whether the entity has the ability to continue to hold the investment on a long-term basis and discussing with management whether the entity will continue to hold the investment as long as the investments and obtaining written representations to that effect. Other procedures would ordinarily include considering related financial statements and other information such as market quotations, which provide an indication of value and comparing such values to the carrying amount of the investments up to the date of auditor's report. Segment information. When a segment information is material to the financial statements, the auditor should obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding its disclosure in accordance with the applicable financial reporting frameworks. The auditor considers segment information in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole, and it is not ordinarily required to apply auditing procedures that would be necessary to express an opinion on the segment information standing alone. Audit procedures regarding segment information ordinarily consist of analytical procedures and other audit tests appropriate in the circumstances. The auditor would discuss with management the methods used in determining segment information and consider whether such methods are likely to result in disclosure in accordance with GAAP and test the application of such methods. PSA 505, External Confirmation. External confirmation is the process of obtaining and evaluating audit evidence through a direct communication from a third party in response to a request for information about a particular item affecting assertions made by management in the financial statements. Use of positive and negative external confirmations. A positive external confirmation request asks the respondent to reply to an auditor in all cases either by indicating the respondent's agreement with the given information or by asking the respondent to fill in the information. A negative external confirmation request asks the respondent to reply only in the event of disagreement with the information provided in the request. Negative confirmation requests may be used to reduce the risk of material misstatements to an acceptable level when the assessed risk of material misstatements is lower, the large number of small balances involved, a substantial number of errors is not expected, the auditor has no reason to believe that respondents will disregard these requests. When performing confirmation procedures, the auditor should maintain control over the process of selecting those to whom a request will be sent, the preparation and sending of confirmation requests, and the responses to those requests. The auditor should perform alternative procedures when no response is received to a positive external confirmation request. The alternative audit procedure should be such as to provide the evidence about financial statements assertions that the confirmation request was intended to provide. When the auditor forms a conclusion that the confirmation process and alternative procedures have not provided sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding an assertion, the auditor should undertake additional procedures to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. The auditor should evaluate whether the result of the external confirmation process together with the result from any other procedures performed providing sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the assertion being audited. Audit documentation. The auditor should prepare on a timely basis audit documentation that provides a sufficient and appropriate record of basis for the auditor's report and evidence that the audit was performed in accordance with PSAs and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Audit documentation. This means that the record of audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusions that the auditor reached. Terms such as working papers or work papers are also sometimes used. Experienced auditor means an individual, whether external or internal to the firm, who has a reasonable understanding of audit processes, PSAs, and applicable legal and regulatory requirements, the business environment in which the entity operates, and auditing and financial reporting issues relevant to the entity's industry. The audit documentations may be recorded on the paper or on electronic or other media. The auditor should prepare the audit documentation so as to enable the experienced auditor having no previous connections with the audit to understand the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures performed to comply with PSAs and applicable legal and regulatory requirements, the results of the audit procedures and the audit evidence obtained, and significant matters arising during the audit and conclusions reached thereon. In documenting the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed, the auditor should record the identifying characteristics of the specific items or matters being tested. The auditor should document discussions of significant matters with management and others on a timely basis, where in exceptional circumstances, the auditor judges it necessary to depart from a basic principle or an essential procedure that is relevant in the circumstances of the audit. The auditor should document how the alternative audit procedures performed achieves the objective of the audit and, unless otherwise clear, the reasons for the departure. The auditor should record who performed the audit work and the data such work was completed, and the date such work was completed, and who reviewed the audit work performed and the date and extent of such review. Assembly of the final audit file. The auditor should complete the assembly of the final audit file on a timely basis after the date of the auditor's report. As PSQC1 indicates, 60 days after the date of auditor's report is ordinarily the appropriate time limit within which to complete the assembly of final audit file. This is Auditing Theory 6906.